Peter Thiel.
Peter Thiel.
Peter Thiel.
You call Peter Thiel the most influential venture capitalist in Silicon Valley. Why?
Peter Thiel had a problem. He wanted to be the most powerful man on earth, but unfortunately for him, he wasn't born an heir to a throne of a great kingdom, nor was any powerful nation willing to elect him president. So Peter Thiel had to think of a way to get power without the support of the masses.
We could never win an election because we were in such a small minority, but maybe you could actually unilaterally change the world without having to constantly convince people and beg people and plead with people who are never going to agree with you.
To achieve his goal of world domination, Peter Thiel devised a playbook. Through his playbook, Thiel has created a network of influence and power that spans all the way from Silicon Valley's billionaire tech elite to Washington, D.C.'s most powerful lawmakers. His playbook has enabled him to deeply embed himself in the world's most important power structures, influencing and controlling some of the most powerful tech companies in the world. His company, Palantir, has become an indispensable part of the intelligence operation of the United States government, being used to wage war in the Middle East while simultaneously spying on millions of Americans. So much unchecked power that is not accountable to the American public, but only accountable to Palantir's board, of which Peter Thiel is the chairman. When the political winds began changing in 2016, Thiel used his playbook to insert himself in Trump's orbit and then began placing his most loyal lieutenants in key positions all across the United States government. By the end of this video, you'll know how a billionaire with no public office gained more influence and power than most presidents. This video uncovers the playbook Peter Thiel used to infiltrate structures of power and influence and exposes how he is manipulating them from the shadows to reshape the world to fit his dystopian worldview. Peter Thiel was born in West Germany in 1967 during the height of the Cold War. Shortly after his birth, his family moved to Southwest Africa, today known as Namibia, and later spent time in South Africa. At the time, both countries were ruled by the brutal apartheid regime, a system of authoritarian control and racial segregation that legally classified people and divided society by race. Whites were at the top, and everyone else, especially Black Africans, were locked out of opportunity, mobility, and power. Peter Thiel, a young German boy, lived his formative years in this authoritarian society, where order was enforced, hierarchy was clear, and dissent was crushed. The roads were great, schools were high quality, and cities had great infrastructure, only if you were white. Thiel enjoyed a comfortable life built on the backs of exploited South African natives, a life engineered by the state for only a certain race. That was the environment that Thiel grew up in. His first exposure to what absolute power looked like, an experience that would radically shape his worldview. Thiel's family would eventually end up in California, where Thiel would finish his schooling. Thiel's childhood was marked by displacement, alienation, and bullying. His family moved around a lot, so he was more often than not the new kid in class, without a stable social group. Thiel was socially awkward and he excelled academically, which made him a natural target for bullying. But Peter Thiel didn't respond with retaliation or emotional outbursts. He retreated inward, developing a passion for chess, philosophy, and politics. While other kids were worried about popularity at school, Thiel was thinking about power, control, and strategy. Thiel would earn a place at Stanford, where he'd study philosophy and later law. While at Stanford, Peter Thiel would encounter the work of René Girard. Girard was popular for his mimetic theory, which put forth the idea that people don't desire things independently. They imitate the desires of others. This mimetic desire leads to competition, rivalry, and ultimately violence or scapegoating unless it's controlled or redirected. After graduating from Stanford, Thiel went into law but quit only after 7 months. Becoming a lawyer was in direct contradiction to the mimetic theory. Law is a highly competitive field, driven by mimetic desire. Lawyers work long hours to outcompete each other so they can become partners at their firms and earn huge salaries. After leaving law, he spent the next 2 years working in finance. During this period, he developed a libertarian worldview, becoming critical of public institutions and government power. He was intrigued by the idea of reorganizing the financial industry in a way that decentered banks and stifled the control that governments had on money. During this period, the dot-com boom was in full swing. Internet companies were going public for billions of dollars, and founders in their 20s were becoming overnight millionaires. Peter Thiel, like many at the time, was enamored by the untold riches of the internet. So he set up a hedge fund to try and get in on the dot-com craze. Although his hedge fund wasn't really successful, it led to him having the most important encounter of his life. In the late 90s, a young entrepreneur called Max Lufshin was working on a cryptographic payments technology that allowed mobile devices to send and receive money through the internet. A friend of Peter Thiel heard about Max Lufshin's venture and immediately recognized that what Lufshin was doing perfectly aligned with the vision that Peter had of digital transactions that didn't require banks. Lufshin's venture, however, wasn't successful. At the time, a few people had mobile devices that were internet-enabled, and even fewer people used them for money transactions. But Peter Thiel saw potential in the idea, so the two founded a company that would later come to be called PayPal, with a vision of democratizing transactions by using the internet as a medium for money transactions. Although Peter Thiel frames the idea of a currency not controlled by the banks as a libertarian idea, when we look at history, we notice a trend between power and banking. The most powerful families in history were often banking dynasties. Think the Rothschilds and the Medici family. By building the digital infrastructure for modern money and transactions, Thiel was trying to position himself at the center of power in the emerging digital age, a position he could leverage to shape the world according to his own worldview. Peter Thiel began applying Girard's mimetic theory to free markets to help him build a tech empire. He saw mimetic desire as a great explanation for market behavior, explaining why startups copy each other's ideas and end up in zero-sum competitions where they compete each other to death in a fruitless race to beat each other on price. He developed the idea that the goal of a founder should be to build a company that has no competition, to break free from mimetic desire and build a company that is a monopoly. In his own case, Peter Thiel was hell-bent on building a monopoly that would control all the world's digital transactions. At the time of PayPal's founding, there were very few startups working on digital transactions. The market was primed for a monopoly to emerge. But as PayPal gained traction, a new competitor emerged. The competitor was called X.com, a financial transactions platform founded by Elon Musk. It was inferior to PayPal, but had a lot more money to spend on marketing and promotions. At the time, X.com was giving users $10 for opening an account and another $10 for every person they referred. PayPal, seeing the effectiveness of this strategy, soon followed suit, offering similar bonuses and rewards. The result was an arms race of user incentives, where both companies were burning through millions of dollars to attract as many users as possible. This strategy worked. Both X.com and PayPal saw explosive growth in their user bases. However, it also created significant financial strain, as the companies were effectively paying people to use their servers without having a clear path to profitability. This scenario was exactly what René Girard had warned about. So again, in keeping with Thiel's philosophy to avoid competition, a merger between the two companies was proposed. Both companies combined forces to become the undisputed market share leader in the online payment space. But following the merger, the fierce rivalry between PayPal and X.com didn't end. Two factions within the company emerged, each representing the old companies. Initially, Elon Musk was made CEO of the newly merged entity, as he had the largest shareholding. but the PayPal faction of the company would orchestrate a coup to oust him as CEO and replace him with Peter Thiel. Musk would choose to not retaliate as PayPal was involved in an intense battle with eBay's online payments platform. PayPal held sturdy market share despite eBay's efforts to displace their market leader position. Eventually, eBay would cave in and acquire PayPal for $1.5 billion. From the sale, Peter Thiel personally made $55 million. While this was a lot of money, the sale of PayPal was not really the success Thiel had hoped for. Instead of becoming the banking infrastructure of the internet, competition forced PayPal to only focus on email-based online transactions, far from the vision Thiel had of a company with a monopoly over all digital financial transactions. But the lesson he learned while running PayPal would transform Thiel from a successful entrepreneur to one of the most powerful people in the world. Peter Thiel witnessed firsthand what René Girard spoke about. PayPal was one of the earliest innovators of online digital payments, a market that had very few players. But within a short time, they found themselves embroiled in a fierce competition and a bitter race to the bottom. This mimetic behavior of the market makes it nearly impossible to succeed for new companies, much less build a monopoly. If Peter Thiel wanted to use Silicon Valley to build his empire, he had to rethink his approach. Starting a company would almost always lead to the scenario Girard warned about. And once a company becomes one of dozens of companies competing in a space, the odds of success of that company are near zero. So Thiel knew that if he wanted power, he was not likely to get it through building his own empire. So with $50 million to his name, Peter Thiel re-strategized, going from wanting to be king to being a kingmaker. Instead of having power through his own empire, Thiel began plotting how he was going to leverage influence and control in the shadows to wield great power. Following the sale of PayPal, Thiel went back to his financial roots and started a hedge fund for the second time. The hedge fund was called Clarium Capital, and its investment philosophy was based on Peter Thiel's contrarian thinking. Thiel took contrarian bold bets on currencies, commodities, energy, interest rates, and the US dollar. Bets that were influenced by libertarian economic thinking. Early on, the fund was quite successful, growing from $8 million to over $8 billion in assets under management between 2002 and 2008, making the fund one of the most successful hedge funds in the world. But Peter Thiel's Midas touch wouldn't last long. Clarium made a huge bet on interest rates and inflation just before 2008. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, Clarium was positioned quite badly. While many hedge funds profited from the 2008 crash, Clarium suffered catastrophic losses. From 2008 onward, Clarium lost money for 5 straight years. By 2011, Clarium Capital had imploded. What was once an $8 billion war chest had crumbled to less than $350 million, most of the remaining money being Thiel's own money. By 2013, the fund was quietly shut down. Thiel's grand experiment was over. His vision to bend the global financial system to his will, one bold contrarian bet at a time, had failed. His attempt to turn capital into power and markets into weapons for his libertarian worldview had collapsed. But Thiel wasn't defeated. Peter Thiel didn't put all his eggs of world domination in one basket. Like a true trader, he placed multiple bets on the outcome of the future. While running his hedge fund, Peter Thiel began privately investing in startups. The most successful of these investments was the one he made in 2004, when he invested $500,000 in a college-based social network that would turn out to be Facebook, giving him a seat at the table of a company that shapes the lives of billions of people. Apart from his own private investing, he started a venture capital fund called Founders Fund. Founders Fund had a unique investment approach. It focused on investing on people over ideas and industries. It was set up to identify exceptional founders at an early stage and give them the capital they needed to conquer the world. In return, Peter Thiel would get voting shares, board seats, and influence over the future tech elite of the world. Over the years, Founders Fund has assembled one of the most iconic and influential investment portfolios in Silicon Valley, which includes companies like SpaceX, Airbnb, Anduril, Spotify, Neuralink, Affirm, Lyft, and a plethora of other companies. Through his investments, Thiel has bought into systems of control over communication, finance, surveillance, movement, and other critical areas of our daily lives. Using VC checks, he has inserted himself into the governance structures of the world's most powerful companies, wielding influence from behind closed doors. His strategy was genius. Rather than try to build his own empire, he simply found the princes who were the heirs apparent to entire industries and crowned them king. Thiel's strategy of backing Silicon Valley's elite before they were elite has paid great dividends, as he is widely regarded as one of the most powerful and feared men in Silicon Valley. Peter Thiel's Silicon Valley Kingmaker strategy gave him power and influence over companies that reached billions of users. But this power didn't translate well outside of the tech industry. He knew that if he wanted to have real power, he would have to somehow get it through the highest power of them all, the United States government. In 2003, with the shadow of 9/11 looming, Thiel co-founded Palantir with the vision of building a data platform that could help governments detect terrorist threats through vast pattern recognition and predictive analytics. As the years went by, Palantir's technology got more sophisticated. Its software maps networks, tracks movements, integrates surveillance feeds, and forecasts threats. Palantir has been controversially used in the US Immigrations and Enforcement Customs Agency to mass deport people. Palantir has become indispensable through the huge data it has collected and its deep embedding in US security infrastructure. It is nearly impossible for the US government to stop using the technology. They are now nearly fully reliant on it. And the frightening part in all of this is that a software so integral to US and foreign government operations is privately owned and is only accountable to its board members, of whom Peter Thiel holds the most power. Thiel achieved what few private citizens have ever dared to imagine: leverage over national security infrastructure. He didn't need to run for office. He didn't need to pass legislation. He simply built a system that the government couldn't afford to operate without. He didn't take over the government by coup, but took it over by owning its infrastructure. But as you can guess, Peter Thiel still wanted more power. To complete his plan for ultimate power, he went straight for the seat of power itself, the office of the President of the United States. Thiel wasn't born in the US, so constitutionally, he couldn't run for United States presidency. But Thiel didn't need to run for United States presidency. He simply borrowed his Kingmaker playbook that he used in Silicon Valley and applied it to US politics. Thiel shocked the traditionally left-leaning tech elite of Silicon Valley when he publicly endorsed Trump at a rally in 2016. He donated $1.25 million to Trump's campaign. While most of his peers in Silicon Valley backed the Democratic Party, seeing Trump as a threat to democracy, Thiel saw a wrecking ball, someone who was a populist, an outsider with a chance to win. When Trump won the election, his bet paid off massively. Thiel was appointed a member of Trump's transition team. Like his favorite childhood game, chess, he quietly began placing his allies and former employees in strategic positions across the Pentagon, Homeland Security, and beyond to help him secure big government contracts for Palantir and increase his level of influence and power in America. But his most successful political project by far is J.D. Vance. In 2016, J.D. Vance had built a following as a voice for working-class Americans. Thiel spotted his rise in popularity, personally inviting Vance into his inner orbit, bringing him into Silicon Valley's elite circles and offering him a role at Merthro Capital, one of Thiel's investment funds. Thiel immersed Vance with his libertarian and contrarian worldview, shaping Vance's worldview to align with his. Privately, Thiel began urging Vance to run for Senate in Ohio. Thiel mentored Vance directly, coaching him on messaging, political positioning, and the art of controlled disruption. When Vance announced his Senate run in 2021, he had the full backing of Thiel's war chest. Thiel funneled $15 million into his campaign. Thiel helped shape Vance's anti-elite, anti-woke, pro-America message, transforming Vance from someone who was very critical of Trump to a full MAGA loyalist, echoing Thiel's embrace of disruption as a pathway to power. In 2022, Vance won the Senate seat in Ohio. Thiel had just successfully installed a loyal ideological proxy inside the United States Senate, a man he personally recruited, financed, and shaped. And on July 15, 2024, in a shock move, Trump announced that Thiel's protege, J.D. Vance, would become the Vice President of the United States of America, making a Peter Thiel loyalist the second most powerful person in America and arguably in the world. With Vance's appointment as VP, Peter Thiel's long game had just been achieved. From Silicon Valley's elite to Washington, D.C.'s powerful offices, Peter Thiel has successfully built a network of power and influence that allows him to quietly shape the world according to his worldview. This makes him one of the most dangerous people in the world, because the world Peter Thiel wants is not a world the rest of us would prefer to live in. For example, when Peter Thiel was asked whether he preferred the human race to endure, this is how he answered.
You would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
Yes?
I don't know. I would
This is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions implicit in
Should the
this.
human race survive?
Yeah, a question that is only supposed to be met with an immediate yes somehow made Peter Thiel have to think twice. Peter Thiel was quoted saying he no longer believes that freedom and democracy are compatible. He has come to have a worldview where he believes that societies should be ruled by a group of a few technocrats with absolute control. This kind of belief is concerning from someone who witnessed firsthand the brutality of an authoritarian government in apartheid South Africa. But for him, back then, he was part of the ruling class, so I guess the system worked perfectly for him. And in the anti-democratic world he's envisioning, he would also be part of the ruling class. So it would make perfect sense why he doesn't like a system that gives power to elected representatives and not billionaire megalomaniacs. If Peter Thiel has his way and shapes the world according to his worldview, will we recognize the world when it is finished? Because by the time we realize that the world is no longer the same, it might already be too late.